Well, first things first. I flew into California, from California a few days ago, and honestly speaking, London has to be one of the best cities I've been in. It's honestly beautiful, it's lively. I have to admit, it's really an amazing city. Definitely up there with Los Angeles and San Francisco. And to introduce myself, I will explain that my name is Shane Austrie, as you already know, and my experience, I've worked at several tech companies, consulted for several tech companies, and overall, it's ranged from tech companies like Reddit, Facebook, Tapjoy, and as of recently, I've joined a venture-backed AI startup. You may have seen us recently in Yahoo Sports for raising $2.1 million. And over my long tenure in the data space, something that I've learned, one truth that I've learned that maybe only few executives can truly understand is that data lies. And specifically, I should say, the misinterpretation of data can lie. So we're going to use a very famous story that's populated through the decades. And it entails a W-2 aircraft. One thing that should be noted, a fun fact, is that before Silicon Valley became Silicon Valley, the Army, Navy, and Marines actually led innovation in the US. And they were using data scientists before data scientists were called data scientists. Back then, they actually kept it simple. It was applied mathematics. So we're going to zoom into this picture. And overall, in this diagram, you'll see where an anti-aircraft went into enemy zone, it came back. You can see the hull damage from enemy troopers shooting at the plane. As a data scientist looking at this data, right, you may think there are damages in certain areas, that's where we should reinforce. However, one thing that you should keep in mind, and that a legendary mathematician at the time pointed out, that this data set is actually skewed, and it could be misinterpreted. This data set is actually based off the planes that actually made it back, which is high importance because if you look at the parts that are circled, you notice that the turbines have no damages, which is weird because the turbines are actually the most important part of the plane. To give you a good example, if the turbines are damaged, the plane will no longer fly. Additionally, if the glass that shields the pilot is damaged, he could be injured, he could lose oxygen, and surprisingly, those have no red dots. That's a hint that the data might be skewed. And overall, if someone were to take this data by face value, they may actually risk going in a direction for their company that they didn't expect to go to. And this leads me to discuss the need for human instincts. So after speaking with a good number of executives, I've come to realize that a lot of executives publicly discuss how data is important, data is transforming the world, how machine learning is going to transform all these companies, but most of the time, what happens behind closed doors is that they actually secretly do not fully trust data. And I understand, because the person it took, the guts and the instincts it took to climb the corporate ladder and become the person you are to that position, you naturally trust your gut and your instincts, and sometimes data goes against that. So for me, I see their perspective, and I really wanted to bridge the gap between data and someone who's traditionally gone with more instinct-based approach. And for this, we'll use one of my favorite companies to study, Adobe. So in 2005, 2006, Adobe's stocks were soaring. They just bought Flash, and honestly speaking, they were doing pretty well. They were a pretty recognized name. In 2006, they hired Anne. Anne became the VP of branding for Adobe. Now, the thing is, she came from a journalism background. However, she wanted, before going to Adobe, she wanted to embrace the Silicon Valley mindset. And in order to do that, she ended up working in Intel, actually working at a few startups, and that helps her craft a more data-focused mindset. Something that she noticed when she joined Adobe as VP of branding is that she noticed that the executive team lacked courage to make certain decisions. So some of these decisions that they would know is that, hey, a downturn is coming. It's always coming. They knew it in their gut. The executives that worked together all knew it, but they didn't want to address it. They just wanted to ride along and enjoy the time being in order to not shake the ground. However, later on, actually 2 years later, 2008, the crash happened for Adobe. Their stock prices dropped by 50%. And it was only thanks to Anne's pilots that she was actually able to lead the company to a point where they were still growing. For her, she launched 30 pilots in 4 years, from 2006 to 2010. Some of these pilots incorporated new techniques for that time. At this point, it's probably extremely common. Some of the things that she did was she allocated practically all the marketing spend to digital, which was kind of rare at that time. Additionally, she also implemented predictive analytics. So she would be able to predict the return on ad spend from her marketing budgets. At that time, it sounded crazy. No one really believed it, and she knew because of the DNA of Adobe that it was most likely going to fail. Her pilots was going to fail because it did not have the necessary resources and agreement in the company to actually uphold the vision. So over time, she brought in external data scientists in order to help with achieving the new pilots that she wanted to accomplish. Over time, she actually led a significant growth. She's been there for 14 years, and if any of you guys follow Adobe, a lot of the tools that they built in-house, thanks to her leadership, actually is what helped them rise to fame in the cloud space, which I've been doing for the last 3-4 years. So the last discussion that we had yesterday, they mentioned an interesting term, augmented intelligence. Now, the reason why that's interesting is it's a little bit different than artificial intelligence. When you say artificial intelligence, you're implying that you're replacing humans. And that cannot be the case as of right now. There's so many variables that we haven't explored and incorporated into these new models. Yes, they're advanced. Yes, they could do simple tasks, probably better than humans in some cases, but overall, augmented intelligence shows that, hey, we're supposed to incorporate man and machine. We're supposed to actually allow them to work together. And augmented intelligence, you should question it just like you'd question any other human. You would question someone making a decision, so why not question augmented intelligence? And that ties back into the gut feeling. If we want to incorporate change among higher leadership, we have to start allowing intelligence to be judged and not, hey, we just accept the data on whatever data says, because with the World War II aircraft, you can see that data could be misinterpreted. And some of the transformations that we're seeing in marketing right now is trackability. Well, of course, we're dealing with hectic times. Browsers are going cookieless. Google is planning that in the next 2 years. iOS devices, thanks to iOS 14.5, we don't have device IDs, so it's harder to track. But companies have started to partner up, and we're still able to achieve some trackability. We're able to combine the online and offline funnel. So for example, if you are a retail store, you can actually track whether someone just walks by your store, and then you can see later on, hey, this is their Facebook account, let's retarget them a couple times and maybe they buy. That 100% encloses both funnels, because in the past, we would separate online funnels from offline funnels. Target actually incorporated this 3 years ago. However, this technology has been around for a long time, and hopefully, with the accessibility of machine learning, we will see a point where even mom and pop shops can do this. Customer understanding. With customer understanding, we start to understand the why behind everything that's being done within marketing, from why does customer buy, why is retention at that length, why is the LTV at that length, and additionally, why do users churn? In traditional sense, we normally just accept churn. We might send out a survey to ask, hey, why did you unsubscribe? Why are you no longer following us? Most of the time, that goes unanswered, and that leaves a clear void. But with machine learning, we start to be able to understand our consumers a lot better, from going through their Twitter profiles and using natural language processing to identify the key brands, the key identities that they identify with, and do your brand actually still incorporates what they care about. Niche marketing. So niche marketing counts as podcasts, influencers, events, things that actually could drive a sustainable growth compared to traditional ads, because as you all know, there's such a thing as ad blindness where you no longer see ads after getting used to them on the page. These other forms of marketing can actually lead to tremendous growth. So now, thanks to machine learning, we're able to track the ROI of influencer campaigns, track the ROI of events, whether you're a sponsor and you want to track how much customers they actually get from being at this event for sponsoring this event. And there's shows like Anchor where basically they could track the ROI of podcasts. Overall, we're seeing some incredible growth in the marketing tech space. But bringing it back to Anne, it's hard because customers, specifically companies, they look at all this new fancy tech and they're just like, hey, where do I sign up? They just want a quick and easy process. They want to just use the technology as if it's AWS, and that's not the case. As Anne showed that with Adobe, they, at that time when she joined, they were using traditional tools that you could just find online. They were not actually making their own tools for their specific use cases. And due to that fact, they were actually underperforming than what they could have truly achieved if they were adapting to their unique use case. Instead, they was using public software. And that's something I would love to stress to companies where, yes, you can use other companies' software and they might perform, but sometimes you do need an extra nudge and advantage when working with your own company and your unique needs. Thank you.
Shane, thank you very much. It's really great to watch you speak. We've had a few questions come in, if you're okay to
sure.
have an answer. So one question is quite high level. Someone wanted to know, what big developments do you expect to see in AI and machine learning as it relates to marketing in the next 5 years?
Definitely, it's going to be a combination of machine learning with AR. So we're going to start seeing AR ads. And additionally, these AR ads will adapt to our specific interests. So for me, I might be more of an anime fan and I want to see that ad represented in a unique art style. Versus if you are into some other type of art, you might want to adjust the actor that's in the ad, and it's just an AR ad that you see in front of you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. How useful do you think a lot of the kind of automated, particularly segmentation, so MailChimp in the news obviously because it was purchased yesterday, the day before, they will allow you to send emails at a certain time for a certain user. Things like that are relatively helpful. How much more mainstream can these tools become, and how more inventive can marketers be in the way we use them?
MailChimp only touches the surface. Imagine you have a diverse customer base. The things you want to do is you want to change the models that you use. Let's say if you're an e-commerce store, you're selling clothing, you want to change the models to match the user that's currently viewing your email. So these tools can reach a whole nother level once they start adapting new machine learning and customer data.
No, that makes sense. One more question that's been entered, which again I think is probably quite high level, but in what stage in planning a campaign do you start thinking about which tools you're going to use?
That's normally set in advance in the sense of who are you targeting. If you are targeting someone who isn't on Facebook, then you wouldn't use certain Facebook tools. If they are a more intellectual person, they might be on Twitter or they might be on Reddit, and then you adapt to that. If they're on Twitter, then you might start looking into hashtag tools or studying common creators that you could connect with to use as added social proof for your product.
Okay, one big advantage of digital tools in marketing is that you can set a user journey and you can follow it. So you can meet someone on Facebook, meet them where they are, and then guide them through your journey in multiple ways. Do you know any examples of A, businesses with tools that do that very well, or B, businesses whose marketing departments you know of that do that particularly well?
Well, I do know Target is probably the biggest one, honestly, because they are tracking a good bit of details. But overall, I do know there are some tools that help with tracking the journey, whether it's from a mobile ad, all the way to installing an app. There are tools like that. None of them particularly stand out. They all have their own pros and cons.
No, that makes perfect sense. Look, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate you flying in. I'm sure you didn't fly in just for us, but thank you very much. Fantastic speech. Shane.
All right.